Good morning. My name is Eleanor Vance, but everyone here in Willow Creek, Montana, knows me as Grandma Ellie from the bakery. If you've ever passed through the farmer's market on a Thursday morning, you've likely seen me, a 78-year-old woman with gray hair tucked under a colorful bandana, selling pies that folks claim are the best in this corner of the Midwest. Today, after holding this story inside for a lifetime, I've decided to share what happened to me. There are things we bury so deep for so many years that they begin to fester within us. And this story is suffocating me, having been locked away for so long. I was born in 1945 in a simple timber house in rural Montana. My father, Silas, was a man respected by everyone in the area. The owner of a small general store, he was always seen in a straw hat with a hand-rolled cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. He was the kind of man who could command respect with a single glance. Inside our home, however, was another story entirely. I grew up in a family where my father's word was the absolute law. My mother, bless her heart, lived with her head bowed, always agreeing, always obeying. We were 6 siblings, 4 boys and 2 girls, with me being the youngest. The boys could do anything: go to school, play outside, taste freedom. Meanwhile, my sister Clara and I were barely allowed to leave the yard. "Proper girls don't wander," my father would declare in a voice that brooked no argument. "Girls are meant to learn how to keep a house, cook, and prepare to be wives." And so I spent my childhood and youth under my father's suffocating watch. I only completed the 4th grade. After that, my father decided I knew enough reading and writing for a woman. The rest of my time was spent helping my mother with chores and learning to cook. I suppose that's why, when I met Robert at 17, I fell in love so fast. He represented a chance to escape the prison of my father's house. Robert was 25, a truck driver who had just moved to our town. He was a handsome man, with an easy smile and a way with words. We met at a church fair. I remember helping serve food when he approached the booth, looked straight into my eyes, and said, "The food must be as lovely as the cook." I turned beet red, but I felt something new that day, a flutter in my stomach I'd never known. After that, Robert began frequenting my father's store, buying things he didn't need just for a chance to see me. My father noticed his intentions quickly, but didn't object when Robert asked for permission to court me. In fact, I think my father was relieved. A married daughter was one less mouth to feed. The courtship was short and always supervised. We were never alone. My mother, my sister, or one of my brothers was always hovering nearby. Still, in those brief moments, Robert made me dream of a different life. He told me about the cities he visited in his truck and promised one day he'd take me to see the ocean. "Eleanor," he'd say, "you deserve more than this small life. With me, you'll see the world." And I believed him with all the force of my young, naive heart. Our engagement was announced after 6 months. Robert made a down payment on a small house in the next town over, where we would live after the wedding. He bought furniture piece by piece, always showing me photos and including me in the decisions. For the first time in my life, I felt valued. The wedding was set for June 1963. I had just turned 18. In the months leading up to it, I could barely sleep. I was finally leaving my father's house, finally becoming my own person, finally able to breathe. If you're finding value in my story, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. I'd love for you to leave a like and comment below telling me what city you're watching from. An old, curious woman like me is always happy to know how far my voice can travel. But let's return to the story, because things, unfortunately, are about to get much worse. On the eve of the wedding, we had a small celebration at our house. Gerald couldn't be there. He'd gone to a neighboring town to borrow a suit and would only be back the next morning for the 10:00 a.m. ceremony. The house was buzzing. My aunt sewed last-minute details onto my simple dress, while my mother cooked, filling the house with comforting aromas. Amid the commotion, my father was strangely quiet, sitting in his rocking chair on the porch, smoking and watching everything with an unreadable expression. When everyone had left and the house grew silent, I went to the small room I shared with my sister. Clara, who had married 2 years prior, was in the kitchen helping my mother. I was packing my few belongings when the bedroom door opened. It was my father. He closed the door and stood there, looking at me for what felt like an eternity. "Tomorrow you're leaving," he finally said, his voice odd. "You're going to be another man's wife." "Yes, father," I answered softly, confused by the strange conversation. He came closer and sat on the edge of the bed. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and I froze. "Do you know what happens between a man and a woman on their wedding night?" he asked, his eyes boring into mine. "Yes, father," I stammered, my face burning. My mother had explained some things, and I'd overheard whispers from married women at the river. "No, you don't," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "But I'm going to teach you." What happened in the minutes that followed is something I've tried to erase from my memory for 60 years. The heavy hand covering my mouth to stifle my screams. The crushing weight of his body on mine. The pain, both physical and of the soul, of being violated by the man who should have protected me. When it was over, he stood up, adjusted his clothes as if nothing had happened, and said before leaving, "Now you know. You won't make a fool of yourself tomorrow." I lay there, paralyzed, until I heard my sister returning. I quickly covered myself and pretended to be asleep. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? And even if they did, what would happen to my wedding? Would Robert still want a used woman? I spent the night wide awake, my body aching, my soul shattered. The next morning, I moved like an automaton. I bathed, dressed, and let them do my hair. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger with empty eyes and a forced smile. I walked to the altar like a sleepwalker and saw Robert waiting, his eyes shining. I saw my father beside me, leading me down the aisle, the same man who hours before had destroyed something irreplaceable inside me. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and received blessings. Throughout the ceremony, I felt my father's gaze on me, a look that said he had permanently marked his presence in my life. That night, in our new home, when Robert tried to touch me with tenderness, I froze. I couldn't explain why. I just cried so much that he grew scared, asking what he had done wrong. "I'm just nervous," I lied between sobs. "I need time." Robert, being the good man he was, respected that. We slept holding hands that first night, and for many nights after. It was nearly a month before I could let him touch me, and even then, I squeezed my eyes shut to block out the image of my father's face. Our married life began with this terrible secret. Robert traveled often, sometimes for weeks at a time. I stayed home, trying to build some semblance of normality. Slowly, I adapted. I learned to smile when he returned, to respond to his affection, to pretend everything was fine. But inside, something was broken forever. After almost 2 months of marriage, I realized my period was late. When it reached 3 months, there was no denying it. I was pregnant. The news, which should have brought joy, brought only panic. I did the math. Robert and I had only been intimate after nearly a month of marriage. Before that, there was only that one night with my father. The child growing inside me wasn't my husband's. It was my own father's. Back then, there were no DNA tests. There was no way to prove anything. And even if I could, how would I explain it? When I told Robert about the pregnancy, he was ecstatic. He spun me around, made plans, and started building a wooden crib. "It's going to be a boy," he said with conviction. Every word of his joy was a knife in my chest. If I told the truth, I would lose everything. So I did what many women cornered by fate have done. I swallowed my tears and pretended everything was fine. My mother visited when I was 6 months along. She mentioned my father had been acting strangely, drinking more. "I think he misses you, daughter," she said innocently. I nearly threw up. Before she left, she told me, "Your father really wants to come meet his grandchild when they're born." The blood in my veins turned to ice. "No, Mom," I said firmly. "Newborns are too fragile for the journey." I knew I would not allow him anywhere near my child. Chloe was born on a rainy March dawn in 1964. Robert was on the road. When our neighbor, a midwife, placed the baby in my arms, I expected to feel revulsion. But what I felt was a love so overwhelming, it took my breath away. I looked at that tiny, wrinkled face and saw only my daughter. Not the proof of my torment, just my daughter. I named her Chloe. She looked nothing like my father, thank God. She had my features, my eyes. It was a small miracle. When Robert arrived 2 days later, he looked at Chloe with so much love, my heart ached with guilt. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Just like you, Eleanor." He was a devoted father, changing diapers and singing off-key lullabies. Seeing them together, I knew that despite everything, Chloe was lucky. She had a real father who loved her unconditionally. When Chloe was 6 months old, the visit I dreaded most occurred. My father appeared at our door without warning. "I came to meet my granddaughter," he said simply. I stood paralyzed. Chloe was sleeping in her crib. He stepped inside. "Let me see her," he demanded. "No," I responded instinctively, backing away. He frowned, surprised by my defiance. "She's not your granddaughter," I said, my voice trembling but determined. "She's nothing to you." At that moment, I saw understanding flash across his face. He knew that I knew. "Be careful what you say, girl," he threatened in a low voice. "Go away," I pleaded, "and never come back." Before he left, he turned. "You owe obedience to your father, Eleanor, always." After he was gone, I collapsed, sobbing. When Robert came home, he knew something was wrong. I almost told him everything, but fear held me back. I lived in a constant state of alert. When Chloe turned 1, I received a letter from my mother. "Your father is determined to visit you next month." Panic seized me. I knew we had to run, to go somewhere he couldn't find us. That night, I presented the idea to Robert as an old dream. What if we moved to Denver? More opportunities, better schools for Chloe. He was surprised, but I was relentless. I talked about our future, never once mentioning my father. After days of my pleading, he finally agreed. We sold what little we had, and in less than a month, we were on a bus to Denver, leaving our old life and its ghosts behind. The first years in Denver were hard. We lived in a small room in a boarding house. Robert found work as a mechanic's helper. I started making and selling pastries at a local market. Life was a struggle, but we were together and, I thought, safe. Chloe grew into a bright, beautiful child. After almost 2 years, the past caught up with me. I was at my market stall when I heard a voice that froze my blood. "I can't believe I found you, my daughter." It was my father. He had tracked us down. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "To see my granddaughter," he answered. "Or should I say my daughter?" He then delivered the threat I had always feared. "If you don't allow me to see her willingly, I'll tell everything to your husband." He gave me until Thursday to bring Chloe to his inn. I spent the next few days in agony. On Wednesday night, Robert came home early. He was pale, his hands trembling. "A man came to the shop today," he said, his voice tense. "He said he was your father." My world shattered. "He told me Sophia isn't my daughter," Robert continued, his voice thick with pain. "He said you were pregnant by another man when we married. Is it true, Eleanor?" Looking at the man who had been my sanctuary, I couldn't lie anymore. "It's true," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Chloe isn't your biological daughter, but you're the only father she knows." His face contorted in pain. "How could you?" he shouted. "Who is the father?" he demanded. It was the question I couldn't answer without destroying everything. Just then, Chloe started crying from her room, awakened by the shouting. "Mommy, Daddy," she called. I saw the anger in Robert's face give way to a profound sadness. "Go," he said, releasing my arm. When I returned from comforting Chloe, he was gone. He came back the next morning, his eyes red from a sleepless, whiskey-fueled night. "I need to know, Eleanor," he said quietly. "I need to know who her father is." A new suspicion dawned in his eyes. "Was it by force? Did someone force you?" The question hung in the air. "Yes," I confessed, the word tearing from me between sobs. "It was by force. On the eve of our wedding." "Who?" he whispered, his voice taut with a terrifying rage. "Who did this to you?" I couldn't look at him. My father, I whispered. It was my father. The silence that followed was the heaviest of my life. When I finally met his gaze, I saw horror, disgust, and a fury that frightened me. I told him the whole story, every buried detail. He listened, his fists clenched. When I finished, he went to the window. "Where is he?" he asked. I told him. "Don't do anything, Robert," I begged. "He's dangerous." He turned to me, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me, Ellie? I would have helped you." He hugged me, a strong, protective embrace. "I love you," he said. "Nothing changes that. And Chloe is my daughter, here." He pointed to his heart. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift. "First," he said with steely determination, "I'm going to make sure your father never gets near you two again. Then we're going to start over, somewhere far away." Robert went to confront my father. He returned that evening, exhausted but calm. "It's done," he said. "He won't bother you anymore." Robert had made it clear he knew everything, and that if Silas ever came near us again, he would go to the police. The threat of public scandal was the only thing a man like my father feared more than anything. But we didn't trust him. "We should move again," Robert said. "Farther this time, California." Toll. The idea was terrifying, but also liberating. 2 weeks later, we were on a bus to Los Angeles. We arrived in a chaotic, overwhelming city. Robert's cousin helped us find a tiny room and a job for Robert. I adapted my baking skills and soon had a successful pastry stall. We slowly built a new life. The ghost of my father began to fade. Our relationship healed. Gerald's love for Chloe never wavered. If anything, it grew stronger. When Chloe was 5, I discovered I was pregnant again. The news was a joyous surprise. Joseph Daniel was born in December 1969, a child of love and hope. Our little family had finally found a fragile peace. Until, in the 7th month of my pregnancy, a letter arrived from my mother. I don't know how she found our address. With trembling hands, I read the shaky handwriting. "My daughter Eleanor, I hope this finds you well. Your father passed away 2 months ago. A stroke. Before he died, he told me everything. I don't know if you can ever forgive me for not protecting you. I only know I need to see you, to meet my granddaughter, to ask for your forgiveness." I showed Robert the letter. My father was dead. The monster was gone. After days of wrestling with my emotions, I wrote back to my mother, inviting her to visit after the baby was born. She arrived 2 weeks after Daniel's birth, an older, thinner woman carrying the heavy weight of regret. Our reunion was difficult, but Chloe, with her childish innocence, broke the ice. Do you know how to tell stories? And so, around stories, my mother slowly reconnected with our family. We never spoke of what my father did. Some truths are too heavy for words. The years passed. The kids grew up. Chloe became a nurse. Joseph a mechanic like his father. We bought a small house. My pastry stall became a proper bakery. My mother lived with us. Life was good, peaceful. The secret remained buried. Or so we thought. It was a September night in 1991. Chloe, now 27, was engaged to a wonderful doctor named Mark. We were all in the living room after dinner when she grew quiet. "I need to talk to you," she said, a strange determination in her eyes. The room fell silent. "I'm pregnant," she announced. But the look on her face told us there was more. "The problem," she took a deep breath, "is that the baby isn't Mark's." The room spun. "It was my father," she choked out. "The father of my baby is my own father." My world imploded. "Not you, Dad," she clarified to a horrified Robert. "My biological father." Time froze. How could she know? And how could her biological father, dead for over 20 years, be the father of her child? "I found some old letters," she explained. "From Grandma to you." I started investigating. I went to Montana, pieced the story together, and then I found him. I found my biological father. Impossible, I whispered. He's dead. Chloe looked at me, confused. No, Mom. He's alive. He lives in San Diego. I looked at my mother, who was sobbing in her armchair. I knew then. The story of his death had been a lie, a merciful deception to give us peace. The betrayal was a fresh wound. What did he do to you? I asked Chloe, my voice trembling. She told us a story chillingly familiar. He had approached her, pretending to be a distant relative. He was kind, manipulative, slowly gaining her trust. Then one night, after a few drinks, she didn't have to finish. History had repeated itself in the most monstrous way. Only afterward did he tell her he was her biological father, twisting the truth to make the assault seem like an affair. Robert, who had been silent with growing horror, finally spoke, his voice hard as iron. "Where is he?" "At a hotel in Beverly Hills," Chloe whispered. "He followed me here. He wants to be part of the baby's life." "No," Robert growled. "That will never happen." That night, I told Chloe the full, unabridged story of her birth. The rape, the fear, the escape. When I finished, she looked at me, a torrent of emotions in her eyes. "So I am," she began. "You are my daughter," I interrupted firmly. "And Robert's daughter. Your origin does not define you." "And the baby?" she asked, her hand on her belly. "What do I do with this baby? That's a decision only you can make," I said. "But we will be by your side, no matter what." The next day, we met with a lawyer friend of Robert's, Mr. Davison. We formed a plan. Sophia would arrange a meeting with my father at his hotel. We would confront him, with police officers waiting nearby. Before we left, Chloe spoke to me alone. "Mom, I've decided to keep the baby," she said, her voice firm. "And I talked to Mark last night. I told him everything." My heart stopped. He said, she continued, a small smile appearing, "that true love is for the bad moments, too. He said he loves me, and he will love this baby as his own, because it's a part of me." I hugged her, tears of sorrow and relief mingling. She had found her Robert. The confrontation at the hotel was surreal. The man who stepped out of the elevator was a stooped, withered version of the monster I remembered. But the cold, calculating eyes were the same. When he saw all of us, he was momentarily startled, then amused. "Eleanor," he sneered. "Long time." We confronted him. We served him the restraining order. We told him a formal complaint had been filed. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He tried to deny, to threaten, to manipulate. She came to me voluntarily. He lied about Chloe. "You introduced yourself as my grandfather, got me drunk, and only then told me the truth," Chloe shot back. "That is not consent, and you did the same to me," I added. He was taken away by the police, cursing and promising retribution. As the car pulled away, I felt a weight I had carried for 30 years finally lift. It wasn't over, but the worst was. The months that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional healing. My father was charged, and 2 other women he had abused came forward. Chloe and Mark postponed their wedding. In May 1992, my granddaughter was born. They named her Clara. "Because she will bring clarity to our lives," Mark explained. My father was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Given his age, it was a life sentence. As we left the courthouse, I didn't feel euphoria, just a deep, collective sigh of relief from our entire family. A new beginning. The wedding was 2 months later. It was a simple, beautiful ceremony. At the reception, I looked at my family: Robert, Joseph, Chloe, and Mark, my mother holding a smiling Clara, and I knew it had all been worth it. The horror, the secrets, the pain, it had all led us here, to this moment of honest, hard-won peace. My father died in prison in 1998. My mother passed peacefully at 92. Today, at 78, I look back on a path filled with thorns, but also with flowers that bloomed against all odds. Clara is 33 now, a compassionate pediatrician. The evil my father tried to spread ultimately generated more goodness in the world. And isn't that how we truly win? By transforming our pain into something that helps others. If you've made it this far, thank you. Sharing our wounds is a way of extending a hand to others to say, you are not alone. If this story touched you, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and comment. Remember, your past may explain why you are the way you are, but it doesn't determine who you can become. The last page of your story is yet to be written, and the pen is in your hand. With love, Grandma Ellie.